On today's World Insight, the coronavirus has already rattled stock markets. Can lawmakers prevent a health crisis from becoming an economic one? And we speak to Zhang Weili, UFC women's strawweight champion. She talks about fighting discrimination with her latest win in the ring.
The only way to win respect from opponents is using my fist. 去让你尊重我。
Here is our host, Tian Wei.
Hello and welcome to World Insight. I'm Tian Wei in Beijing. The COVID-19 pandemic is taking lives, having killed more than 12,000 people worldwide. It is also threatening livelihoods. Unprecedented quarantine measures have contributing to slow down of the virus, but also contributing to the crash of the stock markets and cutting paychecks for workers and businesses who are already struggling worldwide. Can the global economy hold up? What about that of the United States? What are some of the latest policies and what are their implications for all of us in different parts of the world? Take a look.
For the first time in its 228-year history, the New York Stock Exchange opened its markets with floors closed on Monday. Global financial markets witnessed bloodbaths in the previous week, and the new week started with shares falling in all major markets except Japan. Experts say the current downturn could easily prove the steepest since the end of the Second World War. Governments and central banks around the world are cutting rates and giving out rescue packages that haven't been seen in decades. But a $1 trillion proposal to rescue the reeling U.S. economy crashed in the Senate on Sunday, as the Democrats and Republicans persist on disagreements.
It'll be because of our colleagues on the other side.
Meanwhile, overwhelming numbers of unemployment claims have crashed websites in some U.S. states.
Last time for a while.
Just when I thought things couldn't get worse, my company actually laid a bunch of people off, including myself.
Air Canada announcing late last night it is laying off more than 5,000 flight attendants. Housekeeper Larry Lou Karumba hasn't worked in 2 weeks.
I'm a single mom of 3. I really don't know what I'm going to use to put food on the table.
And in Australia, queues for unemployment offices are reminiscent of the Great Depression. For the sick and the poor, the COVID-19 pandemic spares no mercy.
Wow. The effect of coronavirus is being felt in the stock market and also in economies around the world. To talk about that, in Singapore, we have Jim Rogers, world-renowned investor and chairman of Rogers Holdings. Good to see you, sir. In New York City, Anthony Chan, former J.P. Morgan Chase chief economist. Good to see you as well. Last but not least, in Shanghai, Qian Ren, executive dean of the Fan Hai International School of Finance of Fudan University. Well, this is a very difficult time, but let's start with the latest. Mr. Chan, latest from Washington, the Fed is willing to, quote-unquote, unlimited expansion of bond purchasing programs. What does that mean?
Well, I think the Federal Reserve is trying to keep the overall economy from getting out of control. But what we have here is a situation where we have put the U.S. economy in a self-induced coma in order to be able to attack or kill the virus. But in the process, we're going to cause the economy basically to come to a complete standstill. We're going to boost the unemployment rate to levels that we probably haven't seen since the Great Depression and slow the economy down. But again, the intention is a good one. We're trying to eradicate this virus.
If we dig a little bit deeper into what exactly the Fed is going to do, some say, Mr. Rogers, this is what about the Fed is about to do, which is whatever it takes, in a way. Purchase treasuries and also mortgage-backed security in the amounts needed to support smooth market functioning. That's a quote coming from the Fed chairman. So what does that mean, really?
Anyway, what it means is they're going to print staggering amounts of money. They're going to buy everything they can in sight legally. They're going to do everything they can to prop this up. Is it good in the long run? No. But they don't care about the long run. They care about the short run.
How short, Mr. Rogers?
Well, we're possibly going to have a nice rally here. We've had a huge collapse. We're going to have the government come up with something before too much longer because they have to. And when you get good news like that, lots of money being forced into the economy, it's overdue for a rally. And
Mr.
when
Chen,
we have the rally, who knows how high it might go.
Got it. Mr. Chen, where does the money come from?
Well, the Federal Reserve creates this money. They did it during the global financial crisis, and then the hope and expectation is that they'll be able to unwind their balance sheet. But it's not just mortgage-backed securities. They're going to create a whole alphabet group of credit facilities to help small businesses, to support commercial paper, eventually municipal bonds. It's a whole slew of different liquidity facilities, again, to try to keep the patient from completely dying during the time that you're trying to eradicate the virus. Only time will tell how successful the operation will be.
Whatever it takes, that is going to be the nickname in a way. Mr. Chen from China, from your perspective, where does the Fed get the money? Where does the money come from? From printing money or from somewhere else?
Well, essentially, they're creating money, if you will. So we've seen this before, right? So this is part of the unlimited, if you will, currency, monetary policy. But the problem is, if you only have monetary policy, it's not going to be enough. You need what we call the fiscal stimulus to help more directly of the people in need and these small businesses.
But you know, Mr. Chen, before we go to what is the solution for the U.S. economy, let me just ask you very directly, Professor Chen, if I could. Where does the money come from? The Fed is going to purchase all of this, as I earlier described, a quote from the Fed chairman. So where does the money come from? That's very important.
You're asking me?
Sure. I mean, basically, they print more money.
Okay, great.
But as long as
it's
the dollar
important that we
remains
get a direct answer.
The dollar remains the global currency in the world, they're going to keep printing.
Okay. Mr. Rogers, you want to say something?
Yeah, I just want to say that in Japan, they're printing money every day. They've started buying shares even. They used to buy bonds and ETFs. Now they're buying stocks. This is going to spread to other central banks around the world, Zhang Weili. This is not just an American hype. It's everybody hyping. And that's why we may have a big rally, but it's not going to be good in the end.
Anthony, tell me more. 1.6 to 1.8 trillion dollars. That was supposed to be the stimulus package. Of course, the Congress is fighting at this moment about what and how and when and how much. So, Anthony, how much really? Even it's 1.8 trillion, it will last.
Well, I think the Treasury Secretary has made it very clear that the hope and expectation is that this will last for about 10 to 12 weeks. If the virus situation remains critical for longer than that, they'll come back and ask for more. And by the way, as to where that money is coming from, the Federal Reserve has really unlimited ability to print money. During the global financial crisis, they brought their balance sheet from $800 billion to $4.5 trillion. I have no doubt that they won't hesitate to do it again. And then, of course, after the crisis is over, they'll try to unwind that balance sheet. But we saw that they never end up unwinding it back to the original amount because the economy is growing. So over time, the Federal Reserve has to grow that balance sheet anyway. But at this time, they're going to grow it by leaps and bounds.
Does the Federal Reserve, Jun from China, having now all its tools out, or are there other options also for the Fed, besides all of this we have mentioned?
Sure. I think the toolbox is empty. They've thrown the kitchen sink. Of course, as Mr. Chan said, the scale, the size of the QE can be very, very large. We know that during the global financial crisis, they basically quadrupled their balance sheet. This time, they can do more than that. But again, even if this is a much bigger scale of monetary stimulus, I don't think that's enough. The other thing that's very important, as we've discussed, is how long the shutdown of the economy will last. Because the longer it lasts, they're going to need more. So again, I think they've done everything. They've injected liquidity in all the credit markets, other than the stock market. But I don't think they can do that. They can do that anytime soon. And then they're going to just keep buying bonds. I guess buying corporate bonds is good in some sense, because to help these corporations, because otherwise a lot of corporations will face bankruptcy risk. So they just keep buying all these assets, make their balance sheet larger and larger, and agree they're going to worry about unwinding that when this is all over.
Yeah, Mr. Rogers, I mean, you are a seasoned investor. You went through a lot, and you've seen a lot of stories just happening around you, even to yourself. So people have been comparing what's going on, Mr. Rogers, with 1930s.
Well, Tian Wei,
Go ahead.
Tian Wei, I wasn't around in the 30s. I hasten to tell you, but let me tell you, this is going to be the worst in my lifetime. This is going to be the worst in my lifetime before it's over. 2008, we had a big problem because of too much debt. Tian Wei, since 2008, the debt everywhere has skyrocketed. We talked about the Federal Reserve quintupling its balance sheet. They're going to do it again. Washington is talking about we're going to send everybody $1,000. Well, what are they going to do next month? Another 1,000? I mean, this is going to get really bad before it's over, and then we're going to have a very serious collapse. You should be worried.
I am worried, Mr. Rogers. I mean, tell me more about what happened after...
Wait, Tian Wei.
Go ahead.
I want to tell you, you don't have to work, because you have job security. Somebody has to report to us about what's going on. I don't have job security, but you have job security, because we have to know.
I think the media is working very hard at this moment. I hope it is informative for all our viewers with your help. But about that, also I want to go to Anthony. I mean, how about a comparison now, 1930s?
Well, I think that in 1930 we didn't have as much of the government. In fact, the Federal Reserve, I was an economist at the Federal Reserve, and the things that they're doing now is completely unmanageable. Back in the 1930s, they actually cut the money supply. My PhD is in economics, and when I was an economics professor and I taught monetary policy, none of the things that the Federal Reserve is doing today were even discussed. But today, it's a different situation. Today, we've learned that the Federal Reserve has a role to play to try to stabilize these things. But James Rogers is right. These things have negative side effects. But the point is that right now, policymakers are deciding for themselves that the negative side effects don't outweigh the benefits, and so they're willing to put up with those negative side effects. And those negative side effects are not good ones. A lot of debt, potentially inflationary implications later on, and having even bigger problems. But right now, the goal of the Federal Reserve and the federal government with fiscal stimulus is to stabilize the patient while you basically push the economy into a comatose state.
I see. It's an ICU operation. We don't know what's next, but for now, we want to still have it breathe. Jun from China, when Fed is doing whatever it takes, as they say, and the U.S. economy is taking measures, as we just discussed, what does that mean for the other economies, China's economy included? Now, when we talk about the U.S. debt, China is a big owner of U.S. debt in a way and buyer of it. So this will have rippling effect on many of our economies around the world. Help us to understand your perspective. Jun.
Sure. So in some aspects, this is similar to what we've seen in 08-09. The Fed back then, as we said, they printed a lot of money. They quadrupled their balance sheet. At that time, China was doing reasonably well relative to the U.S. and Europe. So what happens next was a large wave of capital. We nicknamed hot money. through different channels coming into China actually create a lot of problems in China because a lot of money coming in, they're betting RMB will appreciate. When there's hot money coming into Chinese capital markets, there were bubbles in asset markets, and when this hot money eventually left, that also created problems. And that was present not only in China back then, but in a lot of large emerging markets. So what's different for this crisis from the 2008-09 was the cause, right? So 08-09, we know the financial system itself had problems. This is kind of, you know, the financial system has some issues, but this is like a very uncertain external shock. And the direct consequence of this is the economy is in pause. And we don't know how long that pause is going to be. And this is very critical. So the size of the stimulus could be much larger than we've seen before, and that's going to create even more what we call side effects, not only for the U.S. but for the world outside the U.S.
How would you compare?
So the other economies, especially emerging markets. Sure, go ahead.
How would you compare, Jun, between the practices now by the Fed and also the U.S. government so far, and that of the Chinese government? After all, China was in the fire earlier, 2 months earlier almost than the rest of the world. Now China is trying to resume some kinds of normalcy after a long time of quarantine. Chinese economy suffered, as we all know. So what does that mean? How would you compare, briefly, if you can, the simple logic between the two?
So it is important to realize that China now is in the process of resuming economic activities. We say that resuming economic activities in an orderly fashion. Orderly fashion is important because China now has to do a good job preventing these external cases of coming in and trigger another outbreak. So this is a delicate balance, but nevertheless, we've seen a lot of firms going back to work. In this process, small and medium enterprises have had a tougher time of recovering what's been lost. That's important. They need more help. The other thing I think is very important is global supply chain and trade. So as China recovers more, it certainly can help itself, but it can also help global economy to recover. With the condition that the global chain stays intact and also trade barriers. There are no extra trade barriers. In fact, it will be much better if trade barriers are removed. I think that will be a boost to China, to the U.S., to the global economy. But obviously, at the moment, the two largest economies in the world, China and the U.S., they need to work together. China needs to resume quickly to normal activities, and U.S. need to contain the virus outbreak as soon as they can. And if that's the case, and there's a lot of cooperation, I do see this will be over after a short period of time.
Well, of course, that's your wish. Whether that will come true or not, it's a big question mark. Jim, you want to say something about that?
Yeah, I just want to say that, remember, in America, we have an election in 7 or 8 months.
Yeah, we remember that very well.
The election is going to dominate everything, Mr. Trump. Everybody in Washington is going to do everything they can to spend money, print money, to get the economy back up. China's done a much better job. Beijing has been much more restrained. They have not printed as much. They have not spent as much. They've kept their interest rates at reasonable rates. No, we have an election in America. There's no end in sight.
How much responsible, Mr. Chan, Anthony from New York, do you think Washington should be? Of course, I'm not saying they're going to do that, but at least there should be frameworks within which they can work on, not all at the prices of the others. Anthony.
Well, I think that right now it is a delicate balance, and We know that elections do play a role because, in fact, if you go back 100 years, you almost can't find a period where whoever's sitting in the White House, whether they're Democrat or Republican, gets reelected if you're in a recession. And I think that right now it's very hard to argue that we're not in a recession. We are really going to see a deep hole in the second calendar quarter. So they really have to frame that, work that delicate balance between trying to stabilize the overall economy and not allowing it to go too deep into a recession, and then, of course, have this political overlay that James Rogers is talking about. These are all very complicated choices for Washington these days.
Washington, of course, is very much split up, Jim, as you know very well, between the two parties with the election year. So what would that mean for some of the policies likely to be decided by the current administration, and how will that, in a way, be massaged by the politics on Capitol Hill? After all, the Congress has to nod its head before any real stimulus policy coming into being.
Well, John Wei, Mr. Trump does not want to lose the election. No American president has ever wanted to lose an election. He has a lot of power, or discretion, I should say, to spend money where he needs votes. He's going to spend a lot of money where he needs votes. If you're a marginal state, knock on Mr. Trump's door and he'll spend money there. There's going to be a lot of money spent by Mr. Trump and by the Republicans to do everything they can to win the election. Is it good for America? No. It might be good for Mr. Trump, but it's not good for America.
Anthony?
In the long term.
Well, I think that right now there is no doubt in my mind that all hands on deck in Washington to make sure that they can stabilize this overall economy between now and election time. And even if you go into a recession, to be able to spin it in such a way that this is not a normal recession, but which, by the way, it is not. It is self-induced, but nonetheless, voters tend to make responsible whoever's sitting in the White House, whether it's a recession that was caused by overall economic fundamentals or caused by an exogenous factor. The point is that historically recessions are not good for getting people reelected. No. And Jimmy Rogers is right. That means that there's going to be really an all whatever it takes kind of behavior, not only from the Federal Reserve, but also from the federal government to make sure that they minimize that risk.
Jen, I don't want you to miss this opportunity either. So whatever it takes, quote unquote, for politics or other things in Washington, so what does it take for all of us, the rest of the world, to make our economy still viable and also stable despite what Washington wants to do?
Well, as I said before, China's done a better
it is
job
important, especially for a large economy like China. So as I said,
Jim, go ahead. Jim from Shanghai.
I actually agree with Jim. If you look at the toolbox of the, if you look at the toolbox of the Chinese government, the interest rates are far away from zero. So that means there's a lot more room. We haven't had a very large stimulus. The monetary policy have been aggressive, but not extremely aggressive. So for China, there is a lot more room to further stimulate the economy when needed. So that's good. Okay. As I already said, that the most important thing for China now is to resume work in an orderly fashion. The other thing that we need to learn from past history is that you actually mentioned, because China actually holds a lot of the U.S. debt. So as the U.S. government prints a lot of money, we don't know when, but clearly there's going to be a trend that the dollar is going to depreciate against the RMB. And when that happens, when you hold a lot of U.S. debt, you actually lose. Yeah. The other thing is, as I said, we do expect that a lot of the capital might come to China's way as long as Chinese economy is leading in the recovery, and we need to be careful how to handle that in terms of how you best manage your capital account. Yeah. These are lessons that we can learn from the 2008-09 crisis.
They say this is even more than the 08 and 09. There are a lot of scenarios. Thank you so much, the three of you gentlemen, helping us at least to clear our mind a little bit. I'm sure a lot to watch about. Jim Rogers, Anthony Chen, Chen Jun, really appreciate it. I'm sure we're going to come back together again and discuss all the latest. Thank you so much for now. You're watching World Insight, coming to you live from Beijing. More to come on the program. We speak to Zhang Weili, the UFC women's strawweight champion. She talks about fighting discrimination with her latest win in the ring. Welcome back. You're still watching World Insight. I'm Tian Wei. The program is coming to you live from Beijing. Now let's turn to mixed martial arts. China's Zhang Weili retained her women's strawweight title at UFC 248 by winning a split decision over Poland's Joanna Jędrzejczyk. From an early age, Zhang already naturally took a keen interest in martial arts, as her hometown of Handan in North China's Hebei province is the cradle of an important school of Kung Fu. From an early age, Zhang vowed not to have her life defined by others, but by herself. The road to defending her title has been fraught with difficulties, including the coronavirus outbreak, which forced her to take an epic and extended journey before getting to the United States, where the fight took place. But that added challenge has made it all the more significant. Earlier, I talked to Zhang in a video interview to learn more about her preparations and her success after that brilliant win. And now I'm joined from Las Vegas by Weili Zhang.
Hello, I'm Zhang Weili. I'm from China. I'm a strawweight champion, UFC strawweight champion.
Wow. I'm so proud of you, and you know, so many girls around the world are proud of you, of your performance, and also of your personality. How did you recover so quickly? It seems you're in great shape.
Yes, 我的脸恢复得很快，因为我觉得我比较年轻。
My face recovers quickly because I think I'm younger, so my metabolism is better. And I also use infrared light to illuminate my wounds, so the blood clot can coagulate faster.
那个淤血就更容易吸收。
You look wonderful. You know, we heard about the news that the Polish fighter you won over also want to challenge you again. Are you going to accept it?
Yeah, I have heard of that. She wants a rematch, but I think now is not the time. There's a lot of fighters who want to challenge me for the title, and she needs more time to prove herself.
Well said, I think. She needs to prove herself. How would you make yourself always in the best shape for all kinds of challenges from today on? Because you are the strawweight champion now.
我觉得首先呢，我要对胜利非常非常渴望。
First of all, I was very eager to win. Then I needed to keep a good state of mind, eager to learn new things every day, have a goal to train for every day, so that I can make some progress every day.
渴望的一个东西。
You experienced a lot even before you got the title. Tell me more about that. Let's start by talking about how you eventually make that 3-week journey to Las Vegas and finally got into the ring.
我是2月1号。
On February 1st, the UFC told me that the flights between China and the US were all cancelled, so I needed to travel to Thailand for my following preparation. So we packed up immediately and arrived in Thailand that afternoon. It took me a whole week to adjust to the humid climate, and I could not even breathe in the first 3 days. Yet I was told to travel again, this time to Abu Dhabi, as the coronavirus also broke out in Thailand. To be honest, I broke down because it was so hard and unfair for me. I called my mother to tell her the story, and she encouraged me by telling me how those who stand in the front line to fight against the virus, the doctors, nurses, and even food couriers. She said, everyone's working hard to do their job, and so should you. And that helped me calm down to concentrate on my preparations.
But then from there, Abu Dhabi to eventually to Las Vegas, and you were saying after the match that you did not perform 100% satisfactory to yourself because of the 3-week saga on the road. Tell me, how do you, as an athlete, when there in the performance, in the match, be able to bring out the utmost still to fight against the opponent?
其实来到美国以后，
I suffered from jet lag after arriving in the U.S. I could only sleep for 4 or 5 hours before getting up for training, so I kept imagining myself winning the fight and wearing the belt. I was devoted to winning in order to share the glory and give encouragement to both the patients and healthcare workers in China. I think my country needed this victory. Every day I read news about the coronavirus in China. The numbers and reports were depressing, so I wanted to win it for China, to cheer my compatriots up.
因为我觉得现在的中国非常需要一场胜利。
You did it, not only for yourself, but also, as you said, to encourage everyone here in China and even beyond. Another thing, before the game, of course, your opponent, according to the UFC tradition, is trying to, irritate you. That's just one of those process before the start of the game. But she said something kind of discriminative, at least according to what you think, about China and about a country which is going through a public health crisis. How did you come up with the way to respond to her? Why did you respond it in the way that you did?
我觉得东方文化跟西方文化是。
I think Asian culture is very different from Western culture. We are more reserved and modest, while Westerners are brazen. I was really angry about what she said. If it was aimed at me personally, I wouldn't be so angry. What she was doing was making fun of this COVID-19 tragedy. It is very inappropriate. The outbreak was really devastating at the time. Many people lost their lives. Imagine if a father lost his life in the outbreak. What is left was a broken family. So I was really angry and hope she remained fit before we met for the match.
You said something very straightforward at a press conference just before the game when she was trying to irritate you again. Of course, this is already after her trying to use some discriminative words after the first round with you. So what did you say in front of the camera? It was very impressive. Weili.
Yes, I say shut up, shut up.
Yes, I said shut up because I don't want to argue with her. You can't win a match by playing mind games and arguing. The only way to win respect from opponents is using my fists. When
you eventually won, what you just said and experienced, were they still with you?
It's all past. What I needed to do is get well prepared and for another brilliant win, and adjust myself to remain fighting fit. I always treat every match as my first match, giving 100% and winning the next match. To be in the best shape will ensure a very good performance.
Maybe in November, the next match.
Yes, yes.
Okay, wow.
Maybe New York.
All right, we are looking forward to it. Zhang Weili, because of the COVID-19 outbreak, temporarily separated Zhang Weili and her family. But according to her coach, Zhang Weili's coach, Cai Xuezhen, she has been doing an extremely great job this time at the UFC Games. And here is what he said. And now we are also joined not only by Weili, but also her coach, Mr. Cai Xuezhen. Mr. Cai, welcome to our program. What do you make of the performance by Weili?
我觉得他打得不错。
I think she did well. At the beginning of the competition, I felt she didn't find her own footing and was in a free state. After the first round, she told me that she was particularly dizzy at that time. I said, you must be focused. You must think about what we have practiced before, and you must do this. Then, in the second and third rounds, she gradually found her own rhythm. I think the biggest challenge this time was that the opponent was on the offense. This differs from previous bouts in the competition, where Weili was on the offense and the opponents were on the defense. After the opponent hit her, she could calm down and analyze and digest the process by herself, and then gradually find her own rhythm, so that after the third, fourth, and fifth rounds, she was playing at her own pace. In fact, if we follow our previous preparation methods, Weili should start fighting like in the fourth round from the start. But she was completely dizzy because she hadn't slept well for the past 2 nights. The day before the match, she lost weight, and she didn't have time to take a rest during the day because of many interviews. At the night before the match, she slept for about 8 hours, but woke up many times. I know that for Weili, when she is very tired, she needs to have a rest. Then she'll transform, not only for her condition and strength, but her mental state will also clear up, which always happens when she is training. She was fatigued before the final. It really made me worry, but eventually she found her form.
We understand that Weili has been going through a very difficult process before she find her position now. She used to be doing free combat. After finishing doing it in a sports school, she has to go to the society, do all kinds of work. You know, shopping assistant, a kindergarten teacher, a salesperson, you name it. And eventually she found UFC and where she is today. Tell me more about how she managed to do it. What is likely to be with her throughout this process?
Weili is a very persistent person. She always takes it very seriously when she chooses to do something. The first time I met her was in 2012. She was training very differently from others. Once she was injured for 9 months. We kept taking her to rehabilitation, while she also did some rehabilitation training herself. After 9 months, she recovered. In fact, in these 9 months, many times we thought she would retire. We felt that she would definitely change careers. Actually, we had found a position for her at the advertising agency. Unexpectedly, she continued to exercise, and then her condition slowly got better. When she got better, she told me she wanted to keep fighting. Her goal was extremely clear. She said she would change from an amateur MMA athlete to a professional athlete. It took her about a few months to transform herself from an amateur to a professional. And after her first match, she was known in MMA in China. Many people began to pay attention to her. After 4 or 5 matches, she got the first golden belt in China. But her goal didn't waver. When she got the 2nd and 3rd gold belts, she said she was going to the UFC and play in the UFC octagon cage. At that time, in 2013, Weili saw a UFC female champion, the top woman in MMA at UFC. The champion fought in an octagonal cage and was revered by everyone. Weili told me she wanted to be like her, and she said that she must be like her as a champion one day.
Weili, as we know, when you are winning the champion of UFC, the world is experiencing this disaster of COVID-19. Any one of this event would have a big impact on any individual, but I want to ask you, you have both on your shoulder. What do you make of that experience? How is this likely, some wonder, to transform you?
我觉得这次我经历了
I got through a nerve-wracking pre-match preparation this time round and the sudden COVID-19 outbreak. I think the world has become a little smaller. It's now a global village, with everyone being part of the bigger community. Our skin colors, ethnicities, and belief may be different, but the mutual trust and collaboration triumphs all. That, in my opinion, is the biggest immunity we can get. We're all in this together, rather than being indifferent to one another. Let me give an example. Suppose we all live in one building and there are cockroaches in your house. If everyone is mocking you rather than supporting you, pretty soon there will be cockroaches appearing in everybody's house. So when one gets in trouble, the rest should be there to help, to get through the trouble all together. We all live in this world, though there are many differences in who we are, but we are all human beings. With shared future and destiny, we should absolutely help each other.
过2天可能这栋楼上所有人家里都有了。
I agree with what she said. Facing common challenges, we should help each other rather than being indifferent. Help solve each other's problems means solving our own problems. Helping others means helping ourselves.
因为我举个特别简单，就是我在
That's true. An example, we were facing a severe shortage of face masks in China at the time. We went to Thailand and there wasn't enough supply either. We went to every pharmacy store in Dubai and even the US. It's all out of stock. I think everyone lives in a village. If it runs out in one store, you won't find it anywhere else. So the world is indeed small, but very much connected.
所以我觉得就世界非常小。
伟丽，那什么时候回家看妈妈？
我想现在就飞回去看她，因为我非常。
I wish I could go back to see her now. I miss my family so much, but I got to stay in Beijing for self-quarantine for 2 weeks. When everything settles, maybe when the outbreak is over, I could finally go back home to see my mother.
要跟妈妈在这儿说句话吗？也许你隔离之前，我们的节目就已经播出了啊。
我想跟她说的是。
I want to tell her every time I get injured after a match, she didn't really say something, but I know that really breaks her heart. After this match, I haven't been having video calls with my mother because I got bruises on my face. She would be really concerned seeing this. I'm waiting for the bruises to heal before I have video calls with her and telling her that I'm all good. I want to tell her that after all, I've chosen this career and I want to do my best and excel in it. Bruises means nothing to me. They'll recover in a number of days. I wish to be a role model for some young athletes and kids out there, hoping that our next generation can be physically fit and, more importantly, mentally strong.
Thank you so much, Weili and
好的，
Tsai. 谢谢。We are proud of you.
See you in Beijing.
Yay.
Bye.
Bye. Zhang Weili, strawweight champion UFC. A great fight, but also big spirit in a way, not just for China, but also for the other parts of the world against this COVID-19. And that is all the time we have for today. If you'd like to see more, try to find us, World Insight, into your search engine. Check out our YouTube channel, Twitter, and Facebook accounts. From me, Tian Wei, everyone on the team, thanks for watching.